Welcome Global Advisor to the winners of the Earthshot Prize and founder of Bloomberg Philanthropies and Bloomberg LP, Michael R. Bloomberg.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm honored to welcome you to the greatest city in the world. I'm a little bit prejudiced about that, and to the iconic Plaza Hotel. And if this is your first time here, you might recognize the lobby from the cinematic masterpiece Home Alone 2. It's about a 10-year-old boy who is smarter than every adult that he comes across. And today we see a version of that movie play out every day because even most children understand the climate crisis is real. And it's not a future threat, it is something that's a threat right now, and the effects are only getting worse. Just look at the news. Once-in-a-century floods occur what seems like every other year, like in West Africa, where as we speak, severe flooding has displaced millions of people and caused more than 1,000 deaths. Hurricanes plummet the Caribbean and the U.S. with increasing frequency and velocity, and ferocious cyclones doing the same thing to the Asia-Pacific region. Historic droughts make land infertile and borderline uninhabitable. More frequent and bigger wildfires laying waste to towns, and heat waves that set new records and taking more lives. And if that doesn't depress you, I don't know what would. All of that should be enough to spur bold action on climate change. But there's another reason to act, which Prince William recognized in launching the Earthshot Prize, and it's this. Climate change isn't only the biggest challenge we face, it is also our greatest opportunity to build a better, healthier, and more prosperous future. It's a chance to spur innovation and inventions that improve people's lives, to support new collaborations across borders and across industries, and to push new frontiers of discovery. And supporting that spirit of innovation and collaboration is what the Earthshot Prize is all about, and that's why we're here today. Now, there are a lot of prizes for a lot of different fields, including the Nobel Prize, which is awarded to the world's greatest artists and scientists in their respective fields. But one category the Nobel Committee does not recognize is the environment, which means there's no Nobel Prize for saving the world from the biggest collective challenge we have ever faced. And so in 2020, Prince William and the Royal Foundation set out to fill the void by creating the Earthshot Prize. Through the prize, the Prince is helping the next generation lead the way by building on his family's long track record of environmental stewardship. When the Prince first mentioned the idea to me, I was glad to come aboard as an advisor, and Bloomberg Philanthropies was glad to become its first founding partner. Unlike other prizes that honor breakthroughs that have already occurred, the Earthshot Prize seeks to support new innovations and promising ideas. And it engages young entrepreneurs and emerging climate leaders. And so it looks to the future rather than the past. Our team at Bloomberg Philanthropies was glad to be a part of the project's development process, and a key part of that work was ensuring the prize helps the finalists scale up their ideas, because too often, promising solutions never make it off the drawing board because they can't get private and public support that they need. That's why we hold this event here in New York during the General Assembly every year, to connect the finalists with the world's great climate leaders in both science, policy, and finance, who can help them refine, fund, and scale their ideas. And I'm glad to say that when it comes to the ideas put forward by the Earthshot Prize winners, we're seeing their creativity and ingenuity in action. They're developing innovative solutions, like a stove that produces 70% less pollution than traditional stoves, and livestock feed that helps reduce methane pollution. They're also working in their communities on local concerns, like addressing air quality in Poland and managing extreme heat risks in Sierra Leone. Those are only a few examples of groundbreaking, impactful work being done by our winners and finalists. And since we launched the Earthshot Prize, it has generated more than 4,000 nominations across more than 160 countries, and we're named 45 finalists and 15 winners. Today, we'll be announcing the next group of 15 finalists, and I know we have some past winners here with us today, and it's been great to see their work spread and make a difference after the prizes are announced. So I want to thank all of them for their commitment to saving our planet and creating a better future for our children and our grandchildren. And I also want to recognize Earthshot CEO Hannah Jones. Along with Prince William, her leadership has been integral in bringing these ideas to the world, and the process that she's helped to turn the Earthshot Prize into a global platform with a scale and scope that continues to grow. Before I close, I also want to thank everyone here for joining us and for all your support. The group has been critical to the Earthshot success. Its mission really could not be more important, and the stakes for our success could not be higher. And everyone here gives me hope that we can and we will win the battle against climate change. God help us if we don't. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for your support of this. You couldn't be in a better place than right here seeing the future. We've just got to make sure that it is the future. Thank you very much.
Please welcome CEO and founder of Aquacycl and 2023 Earthshot Prize finalist, Orianna Bretschger. CEO and founder of Boomitra and 2023 Earthshot Prize winner, Aadith Moorthy. Co-founder of Water.org and WaterEquity, Matt Damon. And CEO and co-founder of Water.org and WaterEquity, Gary White. For a conversation with Bloomberg Television Chief Africa Correspondent and Anchor, Jennifer Zabasajja.
Well, first up, there we go. Good morning, everyone. We have to follow up Mike, guys. So you ready for this?
Yeah.
Listen, let's just start with our Earthshot finalists and winners, maybe, because this first session is about scaling your solutions, right? And who knows it better than the two of you? Maybe you start first, though, by telling us what your solutions are.
So, hello, I'm Orianna Bretschger, CEO of Aquacycl. And Aquacycl provides a distributed approach to treat waste where it's generated with an energy neutral and carbon neutral technology.
I'm Aadith Moorthy, founder and CEO of Boomitra. And Boomitra works with farmers around the world to help them improve their soils, sequester carbon in their soils, and improve their incomes through the generation of carbon removal credits. And we do this around the world and powered by satellites and AI to measure carbon and to make it happen practically on the scale of hundreds of thousands of farmers today.
Wonderful. Congrats to the two of you. I think that's definitely well acknowledged. Matt, Gary, maybe you jump in because water.org, you've done a lot of work, obviously, across the world with it. Talk to us about how you took it from an idea to what it is today.
When I met Gary 15 or 16 years ago and we decided to join forces, we were both doing direct impact work, meaning well drilling primarily, and Gary had been doing it a lot longer than I had. He's been doing it since 1990. And Gary had I think we both, independent of one another, knew that that was not going to solve the problem, that there just wasn't enough charity to solve the problem, and drilling wells was just not going to get us there. So Gary had kind of a radical idea, which in retrospect seems pretty obvious, but it was to take the concepts that Muhammad Yunus pioneered at the Grameen Bank and apply them to the water sector. And that was a big thought leap for the microfinance institutions at the time, because water wasn't seen as an income generating loan. You know, in classic Grameen Bank fashion, you know, you would loan me $200, I would buy, say, a sewing machine, and then I could work as a tailor. And to a banker, that makes sense. I can pay that back. But with water, what Gary realized from spending his career in and amongst these communities and talking to people about their experiences, he realized that the poorest people on the planet were actually paying for water, and in many cases up to 25 to 30% of their income on a daily basis, because what would you do for that first gallon of water, right? And so it was this incredible tax on them, but they didn't have any savings to, say, connect to existing infrastructure. You know, a water connection might cost a couple $100s, and they didn't have that kind of savings. So if you could front them the money for a loan, they would be able to pay it back relatively easily because they were already paying for water. And so it was a kind of a thought leap for the microfinance institutions. So we piloted the idea. We worked with Gary. You know, we brought them along over time, and we proved it. And basically, as a result, to put it in context, in 2012 we celebrated the first 1 million people that we reached. And as of right now, we've reached 69 million people. And we actually recently did the math. Had we stayed with traditional charity, with that model of just drilling wells, it would have taken us 600 years to get where we are right now. So that's kind of the first part of our story, I would say. Yeah.
I mean, that is in and of itself scaling, right? I think that is safe to say. Gary, how do you think of it at this point?
Well, I think it is. This is a $1.5 trillion problem if we're going to help people get access to water around the world. Right now, 2.2 billion people still don't have access. 3.5 billion don't have access to sanitation. And so what Matt's describing is that there's this incredible value creation for a woman who one day is maybe walking hours to collect water, or she's paying one of these water vendors that sell it from these tanker trucks, not even safe water, you know, for a huge amount of money every day. And then all of a sudden, she has a water connection in her house. Overnight, she captures so much value for herself that it's easy for her to repay these affordable loans. And so we have this incredible demand out there. So we don't see people living in poverty necessarily as a charity problem to be solved as much as a market to be served. But then you see the $1.5 trillion need. So how do you connect the global capital markets to that woman making a few dollars a day? And that's what we do, right? We create the financial plumbing that allows investors to invest in our funds. So we also have launched an asset manager. So that asset manager raises debt and equity in the US and Europe, and then we provide wholesale capital to this network of 150 financial partners that we have around the world that are making these loans and scaling it up. So we've used philanthropic capital to basically set all this into motion, to basically de-risk this market so that it can be served. And so now we're on our 5th fund, and those funds allow investors to come in, make a competitive financial return, and then we take that money through our financial network. It gets broken into millions of microloans to do this. The most recent thing we're doing with our asset manager, WaterEquity, is now looking at infrastructure. So, you know, oftentimes there are pipes in the ground for people in marginal neighborhoods to connect to, but sometimes there's not. And so this demand we've created from the bottom up has now got to be met by supply with infrastructure. So we just launched our first Water and Climate Resilience Infrastructure Fund that will look at bringing capital, billions of dollars eventually, into the infrastructure area, complementing what the utilities can do, but bringing capital that's much needed, making sure that there's a deal flow there, and we have the investment pipeline so that we can then give investors the financial returns that they require while solving one of the world's most vexing problems. And to me, it's unconscionable that we still have billions of people who don't have what we have at the turn of the tap. And that alone should be reason enough to do this. But now, if we can create a financial return, a competitive return for investors, and we can make those connections, it's really on us to solve this problem.
Orianna, maybe jump in here, because you also work in water. I see you nodding over there. As someone who is, you're just starting out to a certain extent, right? I mean, how do you think about getting your business and your solution to potentially where water.org and WaterEquity is?
Yeah, absolutely. So scaling in water is a challenge for all of the reasons you guys just mentioned. And as an early stage water company with a new technology selling into a risk-averse, slow-to-change industry, there are several challenges. So one is awareness. And Aquacycl was in the Fix Our Climate category in 23, along with Boomitra. And what is also not well known within the climate space is that how we move and treat water today with our centralized infrastructure actually generates more greenhouse gas emissions than the entire shipping industry. 10% of emissions associated with moving and treating water. And we only treat about 20% of the global volumes that we generate. And so 80% of our agricultural runoff, our industrial waste, and our sewage, right, discharged into the environment with minimal or no treatment. So number one to scale is raising awareness of the issue. I bet several people in this room and watching have never heard that statistic before, right? Climate and water are intimately linked. So number one to scale, awareness. Number two, policy. Because it is risk averse, and it should be, right? Water and access to clean water is public health 101. And so that providing that access requires trusted infrastructure, trusted technologies. And so right now, there's not an incentive for a lot of big water companies or infrastructure operators to change to a new technology. And while regulations are in place, really there needs to be more incentive, right, to take on a perceived risk, which is a new technology. Even though it's been proven, right, there is a perceived risk which can be eliminated if there is an incentive to do so, and that can happen through policy. Number three, money. Right, as we just talked about. Because it's risk averse, because it's a slow to change industry, and because we are bringing a new technology which can really revolutionize how you treat and move water, right? These are all great things, but Aquacycl serves in the industrial sector primarily, right? So we've been working with PepsiCo for about 3 years. We're saving them 20 to 60% on their sewer bill. We're mitigating over 100 tons of greenhouse gas emissions every single month in a single 40-foot container at one facility. Now, the scale, right, can be gigatons in terms of climate and many, many millions of gallons of water in terms of access and reuse. It's no brainer, right? But because we are selling into the market that we are, right, it's slow adoption. And so financial investors are largely allergic to what we do. And so raising awareness, bringing in the capital, and seeing some more policy incentives to bring in new technologies like Aquacycl to solve some of these really pressing challenges.
As a 2024 Earthshot winner, I mean, have you experienced some of those challenges as well that Orianna was just outlining there?
Yeah, certainly. I think one of the key challenges, as our other colleagues here have said, is how can we funnel more finance into these sectors at the scale that is necessary for them to be done? So that has definitely been a challenge, but what we have been trying to do for that is demonstrate some key milestones towards definitely de-risking our entire sector as a whole. So one of the milestones that we have recently been achieving is showing repeatability in what we are able to do. So about 2 or 3 years ago, we were only really operating in Mexico and India, large-scale projects. Then we have expanded since then to Argentina, Paraguay, and now even Colombia, Costa Rica, and Mongolia, and Kenya, many different countries around the world. And we've been able to show the same model repeatably across those geographies. But at the same time, we've also been able to dramatically increase the amount of acreage in the existing projects. Like our project in Mexico doubled the amount of acres in the past year. So showing these increases in the ability to do impact on the ground, I think is very crucial. But as Mike said, it's not just about what's been done in the past, but what's also coming in the future. So I think we will have a very large milestone in the next 12 to 15 months that will enable us to further galvanize support and further ensure that we can prove to the financial community that investment is possible in this space. So in the next 12 to 15 months, we plan to transfer over $100 million to farmers and local communities around the world, while also demonstrating that our business, Boomitra, can be extremely profitable at the same time. Being extremely profitable while also transferring huge amounts of climate finance back to the communities. But this is just the start. We want to use that as the proving point to allow financial stakeholders from around the world to say, yes, we can invest in this and we can take this to the gigaton scale, because that's where all of us need to go. Like Orianna said, we need to reach the gigatons. How do you reach there? By achieving these milestones and then proving to the world that these things can be taken to the gigaton scale to move the needle on climate change.
Matt, Gary, are you too optimistic that, I mean, Orianna and Aadith were just noting, of course, a lot of the challenges that they are just experiencing. As you've been on this journey, are you optimistic that some of these barriers to scaling for founders like themselves and like yourselves will be broken down?
Yes, and I can really relate to everything you're saying. You know, when we had an event in 2012 to celebrate our first 1 million people reached, President Clinton came, and he's been a big booster of this work and a supporter of water.org all along. And he looked at the model, and he instantly recognized that it was going to work. To exactly what they're saying, we needed to prove it over and over and over again. And so what he said, he pulled me aside. He said, "You just got to run these numbers up. You got to run them up." He said, "You got to make it undeniable." And so that's what we spent the last decade plus doing, because I don't think either of us mentioned that these loans pay back at over 98%. And so think about that for a second. These are the most vulnerable. 90% of our borrowers are women, because this is an issue that disproportionately affects women and girls. It's left to them to do the water collection if they don't have access. So girls aren't in school. Just today, women will spend 200 million hours collecting water, right? So these women, who are among the most vulnerable on the planet, financially speaking, are paying these loans back at 98+%. And this is repeated. We've done over 13 million of these loans. So these are very real numbers. And it just speaks, it's emotional for us, because it's so heroic. These women who are in, you know, they're in a failed market, right? And they're the victims of a failed market. And it's really about philosophically looking at people, rather, as Gary said, rather than a charity case or to be solved, but as human beings and as customers and citizens. And this method has proved that if we just nudge the market towards them and get out of the way, people want to solve their own problems. And historically, half of the water projects around the world fail within 5 years. These don't, and the reason they don't is nobody takes a loan for something they don't want, right? These are the solutions that they know they need. They are choosing the solution that's right for them, and they're paying the loans back at these incredible rates, and that really is the story.
Yeah, it's a reason to be incredibly optimistic, I think, because if we have gone from the paradigm of everybody in the world is so poor and equally poor that everybody needs a charity solution, and that was the paradigm. Now we've gotten to the point where we can actually provide not just a break even, but we can actually use capital to help them and provide the financial returns that the market needs. So we finally have line of sight on that 1.5 trillion. You guys know how much capital is out there to be invested, right? If the market is sending you the right signal. And so if we can actually use that signal with what we're doing, and frankly, looking at investing in businesses like yours, entrepreneurs around the world that are solving this as well, having the capital to deploy rapidly to scale those solutions, and then going to the capital markets and providing those financial returns, then absolutely we can solve it. We solved this problem 100 years ago here, you know, in the US. There's no reason why we can't solve it around the world. Imagine if we found the cure for cancer, and 100 years from now, there were still 1 million people dying every year, which is what's happening with unsafe water. That's not conscionable. And now we have the tools to do this. And now that's why we're hopeful.
Really great place to leave it. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Please welcome UN Special Envoy on Climate Action and Finance and co-chair of the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, Mark Carney, in conversation with Bloomberg Television editor-at-large and anchor Francine Lacqua.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Mark, thank you so much for being part of this important conversation. Now, Earthshot is, of course, focused on scaling innovative climate solutions as quickly as possible. How do you get the financing for that?
Well, I think you do a couple of things. First off, it's a thrill to be here, and that was a fantastic conversation. You see some of the power of Earthshot and those entrepreneurs right there, and what Aadith is doing as an example, scaling up quickly to 100 million being put out for regenerative agriculture. We had as well with Earthshot, think about Notpla, seaweed plastics company, which was a previous participant. They raised their Series A, Series B coming straight out of this. And Rapture, an electrolyzer company out of Germany's gone public and raised. So, part of it is profiling these. But when you scope back into the bigger picture, I think what we have to do for the system is be very clear where the biggest challenges are. And related to that is to start to organize demand to solve those challenges. And if I can put it this way, demand at the end of the chain. So the final consumer product there, and something that's coming out to go all the way from the Earthshot startup, if you will, to the biggest element of this. This week, there's something called the Industrial Transition Accelerator, came out of COP28, chaired by Mike Bloomberg and Sultan Al Jaber, Simon Steele. And it's 20% of the world's emissions. These are the big industrial sectors. And what they're doing is organizing the end of the value chain demand for green steel, green cement, regenerative agriculture, and on. And that moves all the way up the chain, and that will help unlock some of this financing.
Some of the industrial policies are also changing across the world. And of course, if you put climate solutions in that, it changes trade policies, it changes the things that you're going to also put in sea. What does that mean for technological solutions?
So it's, this is one of the most important issues, I think, in global policy, global climate, which is a number of jurisdictions, and we're here in the United States, so I'll use the IRA as an example. The US government potentially putting out about $500 billion, up to $500 billion of support in various industries. There are going to be global benefits of that, because that $500 billion is going to turn into something like $3 trillion of actual investment. So there's global benefits of that. But there also are some challenges in terms of, well, what if the U.S. increases the competitiveness, let's say the green sustainability of the steel industry, and then just imports a bunch of high carbon steel? Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So moving towards some form of carbon border adjustment mechanism, as Europe is doing, I think that's likely to happen in the United States as well. You get much more integrated climate policy. What does it mean for the planet, though? It means that if I'm investing in those areas around the world through the value chain, then I get access to these markets. So it will add huge incentives to do so. and probably the most, I would say, over the course of the next few years, the most impactful public policy that's going to be there. Last point on it, if I may. I think the world is going to get used to what is the delivered carbon in a good or service, because that's how it's going to be measured for trade access, and in the end, as consumers, how we look at things.
What is now needed to accelerate the race to net zero?
What is
needed?
What is now needed?
Trade policy.
Well, look, the integration of trade policy and industrial policy, getting this demand much clearer. And then I think, look, one of the things which we are at the tipping point on which, and this is a positive tipping point, which is, and Mike and others have, Mary Shapiro, have driven climate data and climate disclosure. Okay, great. But that's only useful if everyone in the world has access to it. It's freely available and can be compared. And what we're going to see next year, by the end of next year, is something, it's a long acronym, Net Zero Data Public Utility, doesn't roll off the tongue. But what will be available is comparable climate data, emission data from across companies and financial institutions, so everyone can see who's part of the solution, who's still causing the problem. That plus policy, I think that pressure is really going to drive change.
And that is the only way to make it work.
It is. I mean, it's fundamental to making it work, but then we need the panelists who were just there, all of you in the audience and beyond, who have the ideas, the energy, the drive, the entrepreneurship in order to make the change.
How does it change actually a lot of what policy makers are thinking about in a lot of the countries when you look at the industrial plans?
Well, I think that what's happened, this is a positive element, what's happened is that we had, with Paris and through Glasgow, high-level commitments, and those commitments are starting at a country level being translated into what are they actually going to do to achieve them. Let's take the example of this year's G20 president, next year's COP president, Brazil. Literally in the last few weeks, they've started to detail their industrial plan, the Nova Industria, their ecological transformation plan. You interviewed the president last night, I know that, so I'm sure he spoke to this. Finance Minister Haddad is here as well. And it's turning objectives into something very concrete. And what we all need to do is then plug directly into that. From my side, make sure we're providing the financing for that, and then, and as I say, the drive that's there. If I can make one other point on it, though, there is a big missing market. Again, I'm going to appeal to the previous panel. When you look at regenerative agriculture, well, you're creating carbon credits as a consequence of that. Do we have the verification? Do we have a high-integrity carbon market that exists for that, for reforestation, for the shutting down of coal generation and replacement with renewable power? That's within our grasp because a huge amount of work has been done to build integrity on supply, integrity on demand, integrity on market infrastructure. Over the course, I think, between now and the next Earthshot Prize, the world needs to come together, settle on those standards, and start to apply them and really unlock some of the power that we're seeing around here.
As we green our economies, how does it change macro policy? How does it change our economy?
Well, I think the first thing, I've been of the view that climate policy is macro policy. In other words, climate policy is macro significant. It drives investment at a scale that is a considerable contributor to economic growth. So, for example, already green investment is more than 10% of total investment in our economies. Those are IEA figures. Secondly, and if I appeal to Mario Draghi's most recent report for the European Union, he puts the decarbonization alongside digitalization, closely related, as twice the size of the Marshall Plan. So in other words, 5 percentage points of GDP of incremental investment year in, year out in Europe. Well, what that's going to do, of course, is drive growth, as well as provide much better well-being. It's going to push up overall levels of interest rates, and then it's going to have an effect, if I appeal back to my old central banking days, of having some upward pressure on prices, not much, some upward pressure, and then quite sharp downward pressure on prices because the marginal cost of sustainable, for example, generation is very, very low, as we see, for example, with solar.
So the economy's changed no matter, actually, a lot of no matter who's in charge politically. actually?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of agency. We're going to see someone who's in charge politically later this afternoon, and they have, it matters who's in charge, and it matters their priorities. But there is this overall momentum. The economics in a number of areas have shifted. And I think, part of what today, part of what this week does is reinforce that this is where the world is going. The world wants to be more sustainable. The question is how fast we're going to get there. The best innovators, entrepreneurs, businesses are getting out in front of that, and they're going to see the benefits.
So what are you most optimistic about from the financing of some of these solutions?
Well, look, first off, I would not underestimate the scale of the shift in financing. And I'll give you one figure to underscore that, which is there are 700 financial institutions in GFANZ. They collectively oversee over $150 trillion of balance sheets. And 500 of those institutions, so well more than 3/4, they now have transition plan. So they now have a plan for those balance sheets to shift those towards funding solutions, and that's everything from very large capital projects, huge rollout of industrial scale, solar, wind, battery storage, et cetera, funding nuclear as well. You saw the tripling pledge that a number of institutions came out with yesterday, down to funding the next innovations that are necessary, the so-called climate enablers, which is what what today is all about.
Mark Carney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Francine.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda. I've been involved with movements for change for a lot of my life. But it was a specific moment when the effects of the climate crisis really pierced my heart, that I was moved to become a full-time climate activist. And in doing so, I realized that this existential climate crisis is like a Russian nesting doll, containing within it all the other issues that we must tackle: misogyny, racism, patriarchy, greed, and alienation from nature. In 2018, it was spring and there was record-breaking heat in California. Wildfires had turned our skies an apocalyptic orange. It reduced the critical forests to charcoal and ash and killed more than 100 people. And it had disrupted the ecological system so severely that birds were falling dead out of the sky over New Mexico and Arizona. Do you know that there are almost 3 billion fewer birds today in North America compared to 1970? No, the fact is climate change isn't something far off in the future. We are living it. It's happening right now. And we all need to do more. To protect the future for our children and grandchildren, we absolutely have to confront this crisis head on and boldly, everywhere. In our own communities, in labs and research facilities, and in the halls of power, and yes, in the voting booth. We have to vote with the climate and the planet in our hearts. I know that this is going to be my life's work for as long as the planet will have me around. And I'm so grateful to be joined in this fight by climate champions all around the world. That includes leaders and philanthropists like Prince William and Michael Bloomberg, as well as the Earthshot Prize winners and finalists, whose groundbreaking work we've celebrated today. The Earthshot Prize holds so much promise. It rewards those who are using their creativity to repair our planet. It helps create innovative solutions, ones that will make a difference out in the field. And it underscores that the clock is ticking. We do not have a moment to waste. The path ahead is going to require incredibly brave and bold actions. But the solutions being put forward by the Earthshot Prize finalists are proof of what can be accomplished when we act with the urgency this crisis requires. Now is the time to show up with everything we have. And that's exactly what the Earthshot Prize is all about. So thank you for all you're doing to build a safer, healthier, and more just future.
Please welcome CEO of Bloomberg Philanthropies, Patricia E. Harris.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us at the Earthshot Prize Innovation Summit. It's incredible to be here with so many leaders in government, business, and the nonprofit sector, to hear from so many passionate climate innovators and advocates like Jane Fonda. The work she's doing is a real inspiration, and we're glad to share her mission. As Mike said earlier, our partnership with the Earthshot Prize comes out of our long commitment to climate change and finding serious solutions that can change the world. That commitment drives our team at Bloomberg Philanthropies every day to take on coal power and other fossil fuels here in the US and globally, accelerating the transition to clean energy. It's why we've partnered with cities to cut emissions and clean the air, and with the private sector to create a financial system that tackles the risks of climate change. And today, it's why we brought together so many extraordinary leaders and so many talented innovators to scale and accelerate some of the most promising solutions to protect our planet. The Earthshot Prize recognizes groundbreaking work that's making progress in a number of critical areas. One that's a focus of our next panel, the ocean. Protecting the ocean has long been a priority for us at Bloomberg Philanthropies. More than a decade ago, we launched a global initiative dedicated to staving off threats to our ocean ecosystems and the coastal communities that rely on them. We've partnered with local leaders and organizations to improve fisheries management, strengthen ocean protections, and preserve coral reefs. And I'm glad to say we've made encouraging progress, helping pass nearly 200 laws at the local and national level, strengthening protections for more than 11 million square miles of ocean, an area that's 3 times the size of the United States, and supporting dozens of countries as they move to ratify a global treaty to conserve the high seas. We've continued to grow and refine our work, and we're now focused on helping to achieve the UN's ambitious goal of protecting 30% of the world's ocean by 2030. To make more, we can clap, that's good. We've continued to grow, to make more progress, we've also worked with the Earthshot winners and finalists like Pristine Seas, Coral Vita, and the Coastal 500. In fact, I'm glad to welcome Rocky Sanchez Tirona, co-founder of Coastal 500 today, to share her thoughts on the stage this morning. Rocky's tireless efforts have brought mayors and other local leaders into the heart of ocean conservation and fisheries management. We're glad to have her focus on local leaders and share her belief in them, and to support her amazing work in partnership with RARE. Rocky will be joined by Maya Gabeira, UNESCO champion for the ocean and youth. She holds the women's world record for the biggest wave ever surfed. And it's a big wow. And she's used her platform as a surfer to advocate for ocean sustainability and fight plastic pollution. That's another priority we share, and we're glad she could join us today. Here to moderate the conversation is Aadith Williams, who brings incredible vision, passion, and creativity to lead our climate and environmental programs at Bloomberg Philanthropies. She's a fantastic champion for the climate, and we're very lucky to have her on our team. Rocky, Maya, Aadith, thanks for everything you do. We're looking forward to a great conversation.
Thank you so much, Patty and Jane Fonda. Talk about a morning of women's leadership on these issues. Can I just get a little round of applause for that? Pretty awesome. It's really wonderful to see all of you here, and especially on this topic of revive our oceans. And the threats to ocean revival and biodiversity loss and climate change are really daunting. But for me, every day, I have a lot of cause for hope, thanks in large part to the organizations that are represented here on the stage this morning by both of you. So Maya, I want to turn to you first. Your path to becoming such a passionate ocean advocate has been really personal. You come at it as a surfer, an incredible big wave surfer. I've visited you at your home in Nazaré and seen what it takes to be a professional surfer, which is incredible grit and a huge garage full of very intimidating gear. My daughters are like, wow, as am I. But can you tell us about just your personal path to ocean conservation, and also what, as a champion surfer, like how that informs your advocacy?
Yes, first of all, thanks for having me today. Well, to put it simple, I was a young girl that was saved by sports, and particularly by the ocean itself. And by going surfing, I tapped into healing and being free and finding something to do for the rest of my life. And that was my passion. And at some point, I think my individual journey was getting somewhere with trophies and accomplishments. And I couldn't be blind to see that as I grew and as I traveled the whole world and spent a lot of time in the ocean, I saw that it was being depleted, and I saw the plastic, and I saw the lack of fish and life and the white corals everywhere. And so it was just natural and my duty that something that saved my life needed saving, and that I was in a position that I could then turn into trying to help. And first it obviously came from understanding. I was very glad and fortunate to be already in Oceana, and then I jumped into the board of directors, and then I got to dive deeper, and you know, the more I dove into it, the more I understood that we had plenty of science to save the ocean, but you know, us as humans and as leaders and as political forces and CEOs, we weren't doing enough. And that was very interesting to me. How can we have all this knowledge and the right solutions and science to back us? Why aren't we doing anything? Why aren't they doing anything? And that made me dig deeper and deeper into what it is to be human beings, and what it is that once we have power and once we held big positions, we couldn't do what is right. And there's a lot of pulls in life, and we have egos, and we have ambitions, and we have to bend here and there, and how to break that cycle.
Well said. Rocky, I want to turn to you, because your work visited the sites that you've protected in the Philippines and elsewhere around Southeast Asia and around the world, including in Brazil and elsewhere. And we know from the places you work that meeting the ambitious goals that we have around ocean protection require action by national governments, by international bodies, but they really require local leadership as well. I mean, where overfishing happens is at the community level. The benefits of that are at the community level. So how have you approached the work with local communities, and why are they important to your work?
Well, you know, we've seen what a good mayor can do in a great city like New York, right? And I think in Coastal 500, we've had the chance to see what good mayors in a fourth and fifth class municipalities in countries like the Philippines can do. They can pass legislation, they can convince fishers that following these rules will actually pay off for them in the future. They can make conservation a priority in their annual plans and their budgets. And then, as we've seen in Honduras, we can also see how they can come together and actually ask the national government to change legislation so that it's the small-scale fishers that are prioritized in the nearshore waters. So there's a lot that can happen, and we've seen mayors grow into this in different ways. They come at it from different paths. For some, it's personal because their father was a fisherman, or that they've seen what devastation a typhoon can cause in their community. For others, it's being brought in by their peers. So we have alliances of mayors from neighboring towns that have come together and actually cooperate with each other because somebody had pulled them in from their neighbors. And then lastly, I think, and this is really what we're hoping will happen with Coastal 500, is that they feel like they're part of something bigger. Recently, we brought mayors from the different countries that we're working in to the Philippines, and one of the bupatis from Indonesia was so excited by the work that he'd seen being done there that he went back home, called a meeting of his peers, invited 48 village leaders to come and join the network, and then together they're figuring out ways to tap the national funds for villages to be used for coastal protection and management. So it's pretty amazing, and I think with these ambitious goals that the world set last year, and then this year the countries are setting their targets and actually writing the action plans. The only way we're going to be able to hit those targets is if we have hundreds of thousands more of these locally managed MPAs, these smaller groups that are managed by communities, by indigenous people, and then really, I think the local leaders are the wave that's going to power that moving forward.
You're talking about the big global goals of protecting 30% of ocean and land by 2030.
Yeah.
And why does that matter for the local communities where you're working?
I think it's actually the best way that we can make these goals pay off for people. This is the most, I guess, inclusive way we can do this because they're the ones that are closest to the resource, and they're really the ones that are going to benefit most from this. But they're also the ones with the most power to protect these resources.
Well, on that, Maya, I want to turn to you because you're an ambassador for Oceana, and one of their taglines in protecting the ocean is save the ocean, feed the world. So it's very much about this issue of not just protecting the planet, but protecting the people who are here. So how have you seen Oceana's work protect people and the planet?
Yeah, it's interesting because we can't think those are separate things, you know. Once we protect people, we protect the planet. Once we protect the planet, we protect people. It's unity, right? We see ourselves as individuals, but truly, we're all together all the time in this whole universe. So with Oceana, it's, you know, we've been two very interesting law changes that we were able to conquer. One in south of Brazil was the bottom trawling, and that allowed small-scale fishers to find again lobsters and red snappers, which was being completely depleted. And with that law, which was passed by the Supreme Court at the very end of the fight, it also allowed for, of course, less of an impact of CO2 once you stop bottom trawling. Also saving petroleum use. So a lot of good things happen when you can tack into and create one big law of protection. Same thing in Peru when we were able to, well, they were able, our beautiful team of Oceana in Peru, they were able to create the law and pass the law of protecting the 5 mile close to the coast of industrial fishing that allowed the artisanal fishers to go out and fish, and that protected food and that area and protected food and families. I think it was 40,000 families that now can actually go out and fish and have what to eat. And I think we do say in Oceana that, you know, you could have 1 billion meals a day of seafood if you actually protect it and allow the ocean to heal, because it's unhealthy right now. But that is the potential. And I think, you know, as food is a major issue in right now in our near future, scarcity, to not protect something that nature has given us. And once we deplete it, it's saying, if you give us a break, we will make sure we, get healthy again very soon. It's crazy not to do it.
Yeah, that's incredible. And you've been so forceful in making the point that it is all connected. And I think some of the connections that people don't always make is, the bottom trawling that's crashing fish populations is also making the problem of climate change worse, and that we're allowing it, including in marine protected areas, many places in the world. Those are the kind of laws that your groups are working to push, so very powerful. I think another theme that's coming up here is about that kind of collaboration and then scale. So Rocky, I want to ask you about how the Coastal 500 work and your work with Earthshot has helped with along those themes.
Yeah, it's been an amazing year, really, and I think we're starting to see a lot of collaboration emerge from this. We'd already been working with WildAid previous to Earthshot, but during this period, they were able to actually raise additional funds that have paid for new patrol boats in 6 of the municipalities that we're working with in the Philippines. GRST, who is not even in the Revive Our Oceans category, is working to bring clean batteries to one of the mayor's municipalities that we're working with to power the tourist boats. This is going to be a game changer because it's going to be quiet. You can actually enjoy the water without the sound of an engine in your ears. Yeah, so that's exciting. And then finally, we're also, we've just completed a concept note with Abelobi where we're going to try and bring their technology to the communities that we're working with in Mozambique and Brazil. And then at the same time, take some of the lessons that we've learned in Coastal 500 communities to the communities that they're working with in South Africa. So many more to come. And I think what's really coming through is that Coastal 500 is really a platform that can kind of like take efforts directed at local communities and help magnify them and connect them all.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we're here in New York for the UN General Assembly week, so I'll ask you both to close with what would you ask global leaders to do to better enable local leaders to take action and revive our oceans? Maya.
Oh, well, I would just ask them, if they're ready to do the work of healing, because I think we all as human beings have to heal. We've all gone through traumas and hard experiences, and I think only when we heal ourselves, we can heal the world. And I think we have to go into this journey together. And I wonder if they're ready to look inside and let go of their egos and their power ambition and all of the stuff that is really not so useful for us as humans to go forward. If they're ready to take courage and take the big leap and heal themselves so we can heal the world together.
On that front, I have to say there's an incredible film about Maya's life, Maya and the Wave. It screened in New York and LA in the last couple of weeks, and just an incredible and inspiring story. So if you have a chance to see it or to check out her children's book, Maya Makes Waves, do check those out. Rocky, over to you. What are you asking of global leaders?
I think it's maybe that the time for talking has passed and it's really time for action. We've made big plans together. Now it's time to really put resources, support, and space for local leaders and communities to get things done.
That's great. Thank you both so much.
Please welcome the founder of Restore and 2021 Earthshot Prize finalist, Thomas Crowther.
So a friend of mine recently informed me that the tin can was invented in 1810. No? Okay, not that interesting until you realize that this came only half a century later. Sometimes it takes quite a while for our best innovations to take root and get embedded into society. But we don't have a while, right? We are facing a devastating environmental crisis. I was recently involved in an innovation which was misunderstood in its time. We mapped the scale of the global forest system, showing that our Earth is home to just over 3 trillion trees. This was a staggering scale of our understanding, but we did get criticized for missing the trees in the Vatican City, so we've updated the number. But these models don't only help us to understand where trees exist now, they also help us to see where they would naturally exist. And we realize that we've halved the scale of this global forest system. But at the same time, we could see that outside of urban and agricultural lands, there's actually a great land of opportunity. The degraded ecosystems that are not being used by humans. And if we could protect them in the long term, there's room for just over 1 trillion new trees to recover. That's a third of that scale. And if they could recover to maturity, they'd capture around a third of our climate change goals, the carbon that we need to fight this global threat. When this information hit the headlines, it went truly and devastatingly viral. It gave rise to the launch of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Both WWF and the World Economic Forum launched their Trillion Trees campaigns. And when the President of the United States started planting trees on the White House lawn, we thought it was just too good to be true. But unfortunately, that's exactly what it was. Because many people saw this as an opportunity to exclude people and to plant vast rows of carbon-capturing trees. These carbon farms are not nature, and they are not supporting the people who depend on it. So when the headlines started to come, instead of focusing on the potential of nature to help, they focused on the risks of restoration done wrong. And I want to stress that, of course, the wrong tree in the wrong place can undoubtedly do a lot more harm than good. But it's worth noting that is the same for everything that has ever existed. If you stick a toothbrush in the wrong place, it'll do more harm than good, so I'm told. Of course, we are not going to be getting out of this by engineering our way out of it. This doesn't tackle the underlying threat, the underlying challenge that we're facing, which is ultimately the inequitable distribution of wealth on our planet. We have a small number of people with massive environmental footprints, but then we've also got billions of people living day to day, trapped in an economy where they have very few non-extractive alternatives. But there's a growing body of research that suggests that these are the people that actually hold our greatest opportunity for hope. Because if we can redistribute the wealth of this planet towards those land stewards, they are the ones who can find the sustainable options. And then in time, the regenerative options that help to build a world in which we can all thrive. Global restoration is not about excluding people and securing nature. It's about finding and empowering the millions of local land stewards, the indigenous populations, the farmers, the communities who are the stewards of nature on our planet. And that is the mission of Restore, a free online digital platform to support the movement where any local landowner can draw around their land and get free information about the carbon and water and biodiversity. Just like Desta, this example in Ethiopia, where you can see the huge footprint of coffee production as forests have been removed. But as you zoom in, it looks like that forest is pretty much intact. And that's because that's exactly what it is. Instead of removing the forest, they plant the trees underneath the canopy of this beautiful, intact rainforest, which traps water and nutrients, so those trees grow really well without the need for fertilizers and irrigation, which means they make more profits. And when nature is the profitable option, you know you can't stop it from recovering across landscapes. That is why all the farmers in the nearby region are allowing trees to return on their ecosystems so that they can have more profitable coffee production. On Restore, Desta gains free information about the biodiversity, the carbon, but most importantly, he gains visibility to us, his customers, who can now see where every coffee comes from. And that agency has meant that his profits have gone up threefold since coming online. And he is just one of hundreds of thousands, in fact, millions of local community-led projects that are now visible to the world through this platform, making the basis of a bottom-up movement spanning 16% of that global potential. Companies can build portfolios to invest in, and individuals can find products that we can buy. And on top of that, governments can also now track their targets towards their biodiversity goals. And this brings me to one of my favorite stories, which is the government of Costa Rica, a winner in the first year of the Earthshot Prize. About 30 years ago, deforestation rate was at a peak in the country, but instead of allowing that to progress, they initiated their Payment for Ecosystem Service program, distributing wealth to local landowners across the country. And on Restore, we can now see that there's been improvements in carbon, improvements in tree cover, but we've not known what happened to the integrity of those systems until right now. For the last couple of years, we've had students across Costa Rica recording the soundscapes of nature. To a scientist, those soundscapes look something like this. This is the soundscape of a natural, intact rainforest that has never been removed. But until about 30 years ago, most of the country would have sounded a bit more like this. This is the static of a degraded pasture in the region. You hear some birds and insects, but the variation is gone. But as a result of that incredible Payment for Ecosystem Service program, the average soundscape of a natural regeneration site in the country now sounds like this. The frequency variation is back. The birds and insects have recovered. And on top of that, what you're quietly hearing in the background there is the sound of howler monkeys. You do not recover large-bodied organisms like that unless there's nutrients and resources to support them. And this means we are talking about true ecological recovery to 86% of that intactness. This makes it the first ever evidence for national-scale biodiversity recovery. And what's really exciting is we also correlated it with the sound of the 100,000 most frequently downloaded songs on the internet. And they sound statistically more like this than they do to the degraded pasture. Now that sounds lovely, and it might sound a bit wishy-washy, but it's absolutely baked into our evolution. We've evolved in ecosystems where the sounds of high and low frequency noises indicate the availability of foods and the nutrients we need to survive. So this doesn't mean that Lady Gaga sounds like a howler monkey. It means that she has tapped into our evolutionary preference for the high and low frequency sounds of nature that supports us. And the most incredible thing about all of this is that it happened at a time of economic growth for Costa Rica. As nature recovered, so then the economy started to boom, proving that just like Destas and the thousands of other projects across Restore, that nature can be the economic preference for people. And when that happens, you cannot stop it from thriving. This collaboration was made possible because of the Earthshot Prize, and we're now encouraging governments and companies to do the same thing, because global restoration is not an environmental challenge, it's a societal one. We need to distribute the wealth of our planet to the stewards of nature across the globe so that they can find the sustainable and regenerative opportunities that can build a world where we and nature can both thrive together. Thank you so much for listening.
Today, we announced this year's 15 Earthshot Prize finalists. This new cohort will now step onto the global stage. Each of their solutions is proven, with evidence, that if scaled or replicated, they will be transformative for the future of our planet. We can't do that alone, and this is why we've convened you here today. This is a call to action, to each of us to have a relentless focus on how we can together help these game changers succeed. Our 45 alumni are evidence that when we work together, we can build momentum and scale at an unprecedented speed. Take LanzaTech. They are now the first ever carbon capture and utilization company in the world to become a publicly traded and owned entity. They are also now launching Circular Air, a revolutionary and commercially ready solution to convert waste carbon and renewable power into sustainable aviation fuel. Or Rome, who are now leading the way in the African transportation revolution, having launched a first-of-its-kind public transport system for Nairobi, and announcing a major supply agreement for the deployment of electric motorcycles across Africa. And Coral Vita, who have launched the first ever Series A investment round for a coral restoration company. Meanwhile, Milan food waste hubs are now inspiring cities from Boston to Oslo to adopt their model. This year, Living Seawalls expects to reach a milestone of being present on 5 continents. And Katie Greenhouses have secured major strategic partnerships to diversify their funding pipeline. They join a long line of finalists who started their journey in one country and have since expanded internationally. Every day, they directly contribute to the improvement of 4.4 million livelihoods in some of the poorest regions in India. These finalists are breaking down barriers. They are inventing the future we all need to accelerate towards. But they need us all to make a change in how we invest, how we take risks, how we make bold, collaborative moves that shape the future faster. This is a call for urgency at a new level. We need to speed solutions to scale if by 2030 we will be able to say to one another that we successfully protected 30% of oceans, nature and water, and lowered emissions by over 40%. Business as usual is no longer an option. We need new forms of blended capital to help take game-changing ideas to scale. We need corporations to invest in the solutions of the future in their supply chains. We need markets to reward these incredible innovators. Together, we hold the pen of future history books. So, this is your invitation to join the Earthshot movement and be part of this extraordinary community committed to scaling the environmental solutions of the future. In just under 2 months, we'll be gathering in Cape Town to host this year's Earthshot Prize, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
Please welcome actor Benedict Cumberbatch and theater director and playwright Sophie Hunter.
Hello. Thank you to the Earthshot Prize and Bloomberg Philanthropies for including us in this year's Innovation Summit. We're honored to be sharing the stage with so many inspiring change makers who are working tirelessly to better our planet.
And as we just heard from Prince William, the incredible impact of the Earthshot Prize alumni stretches across the globe, each harnessing their deep passion to develop and scale innovative solutions to this great challenge that affects us all.
It's this passion that brings so many of us here today. A shared love and common goal shaped by individual perspectives and experiences. But we need to go further. The Prince is calling on each of us to take action. Every single one of us has the ability to drive change from our own unique vantage points.
For those of us in arts and entertainment, we're grateful to have a platform to drive awareness to our problems, to our planet's problems, and combining the grim realities of climate change with human emotion through storytelling is a powerful tool in creating connections and empathy.
The philosopher Timothy Moorthy said, "In a time of climate change, ecological collapse and social transformation, art allows us to see hard truths without being destroyed by them." 2 weeks ago in Venice, I premiered a production called Salt of the Earth. It was an act of storytelling created through a deep collaboration with scientists, activists, and local initiatives. Salt of the Earth shone a light on an overlooked and disregarded but vital ecosystem, salt marshes. For those of you who don't know about salt marshes, they're everywhere. They're in over 100 countries, and they're extraordinary. They capture up to 30 times more carbon than rainforests, with dizzying amounts of biodiversity. They're natural flood barriers, and crucially, their existence is under threat. Globally, we've lost nearly half of our historical salt marshes. In Venice, only 1/6 remain. Working with scientists, with local experts for the last year was humbling and empowering and vital to create a piece of art whose objective is to help the climate emergency resonate both personally and collectively and to foster a sense of shared responsibility. And it's this model of collaboration of art, science, community, and philanthropy that we will now take around the world to raise awareness and to inspire action to protect these salt marshes.
And it's not just about the powerful storytelling, it's also about the means by which we tell those stories in an industry that is heavy on resources. And to that end, I'm very proud to announce today that I'm helping with Sir David Attenborough's grandson, Will, to champion actively the Green Rider. And it's an initiative that brings together actors and producers in finding solutions to the sustainability issues that we face within our industry. And by adding a green clause to our contracts, actors can ensure climate action is prioritized on set and on screen at every stage of the production process. So working with our agents, working with sustainability experts, we can help isolate the areas of most importance and impact and develop smart, scalable solutions and kickstart systemic progress across our industry, from the studios to the guilds, unions, and academies. Yes, actors have stages and moments like this and therefore influence, but it's only best when we lead by example. And we can encourage new norms here that are cleaner, greener, and fairer for all of us. So in so doing, we're hoping to shift the narrative as well from fear and doom to possibility and agency. We can signal to audiences that climate action isn't just about giving things up, it's also about taking things up that can be inclusive, accessible, innovative, and exciting.
One of the greatest honors in climate storytelling is having the chance to surround ourselves with experts who are deeply committed to our planet's plight. Our research, our writing, our performances, our inspiration is derived from the tremendous work of so many, each contributing to this monumental effort in their own way.
In that way, it's our privilege to introduce some of these global game changers whose impact on environmental and humanitarian causes cannot be understated. Please join us in welcoming
founder of World Central Kitchen and Earthshot Prize Council member, Jose Andres.
Trustee of the Earthshot Prize, the Right Honourable Dame Jacinda Ardern.
Managing Director of Africa and Global Partnerships at the World Resources Institute, the Earthshot Prize Council member, Wanjira Maathai.
And for conversation with the Earthshot Prize Chair, Dame Cristiana Figueres. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. How happy are we to be in Earthshot Prize land? It's almost like magic. And I was thrilled that Mike started us off this morning by reminding us of the relationship between this venue and Home Alone. And I know it seems like he talked 3 weeks ago because we've been packed with so much information, but what has been evident to me since he said that is we are proving that we are not home alone. We are proving that we're not alone on our home planet. We're proving that we are together in community, in collaborative effort. In fact, I would dare say we are growing a human mycelium network across the globe. And the beautiful thing about the mycelium is that it is unseen, but unbelievably powerful. So welcome to the Earthshot Prize Mycelium family, because you are now considered yourselves, please, as members of this mycelium family. And we continue to grow that mycelium family. And as part of our growth, we have not only new finalists and new winners every year, but we also have roped in a couple of new Prize Council members. And so it is my deep pleasure to debut 2 of our 3 new Prize Council members this year. Wanjira Maathai, a friend of, I want to say many decades, but maybe that's not the politically correct thing to say. Who, as I'm sure all of you know, is an environmentalist, an activist for many, many years, and heads the Africa efforts of WRI in addition to the global partnerships. And Jose Andres is our other new Prize Council member, started out as a chef and pretty soon decided the kitchen is way too small for him, so he's going to cook in the entire world. So he has become one of the extraordinary humanitarians who rushes in when we have major disasters around the world. So it is truly a pleasure to have the two of you, and we have a third prize council member who we will be introducing tonight. And Jacinda needs also no introduction. Jacinda, former PM of New Zealand, and also an incredible activist and mycelium co-conspirator here. Jacinda is on the trustee board of the prize. And I know that we have a couple of mycelium members sitting in the audience who are wanting to put these three distinguished people to the test with a few questions. So I think, Frank, where are you? Hello? Hey. Hello, Frank.
Perfect.
Maybe.
There. Frank?
There you are. Okay. Frank, you have a question.
Yes. Let me introduce.
Am I reminding you that you have a question for us?
I do have a question in here.
Okay.
Yes. So our group was the winner of the 2023 Clean Our Air category. We make lithium-ion batteries, which have no toxic PFAS forever chemicals, very low carbon footprint of production, and can be recycled simply in water. So a big, important part of our business is policy. So my question is, with global gatherings such as UNGA, COP, spotlighting the importance of policy as a way to tackle climate change, what policies are you tracking that have the biggest potential to be real game changers for climate solutions?
Can I pop that to our former politician?
I'm very pleased to not take responsibility for the global regulatory environment. Frank, great question. I love how you put your solution on the table in the question because you do fantastic work. You know, two things for me. Politicians have the ability in this, this football match that is the climate environment where they can change the rules that will either speed up or slow down the game and either cause more goals to be scored or not. And one of the things that I track consistently is the speed at which we remove fossil fuel subsidies. Because not only are those incentives $7 trillion worth in entirely the wrong place, but that represents a loss of otherwise investment that we could be putting into alternatives. So that's something I keep a close eye on, as well as, of course, the trajectory for fossil fuels generally, which we must bring to an end point. The second that I'm interested in is GFANZ, carbon border adjustments, because again, we need to properly price carbon in our economies. I do think those are things that could speed up the goal scoring, but the one thing I'll also say is politicians are not the only players on the field. So every single person in this room, regardless of how fast governments are moving, can still make a difference. So do not be disheartened by the speed of the game.
By the slow speed. But that is what the Earthshot Prize is all about accelerating this. I also wanted to ask Wanjira if you would come in on this question also, because policies are important, but they will not occur if the almighty dollar is not behind them. So what do you track in terms of investment?
Well, I agree.
Sorry, I have to be politically correct. If the almighty British pound is not behind it, because that's what we track here is the British pound.
Well, that notwithstanding, I would say, that I think Jacinda points at a crucial one in the world that we live in, but I would say nature-based. We live in a world that undervalues the role and the beauty of nature. We have literally one currency at the moment, which is carbon. But we know that forests, and especially forests on my continent, play such a huge role in keeping our planet alive. And we don't value the ecosystem services that they provide: water, pollination, soil, everything that keeps us alive. But we undervalue nature. So policies that continue to incentivize the protection of green spaces and incentivize the creation of new ones, I track.
Good example we've just heard from Tom Crowther.
Yeah, yeah.
Good example. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Is that good? All right. Sam, there you are, Sam, behind your beard. Hello.
Hey, Christina.
G'day.
G'day. Hey, how are you?
It's a nice video.
I wanted to ask a question directed at Jose. I mean, I'm from Sea Forest, and we're focused on reducing methane emissions in livestock. But what we're really focused on is food systems transformation. And I'm curious to understand how can we excite and inspire investors and businesses in this room to make those bold and brave steps to change and create positive environmental and social outcomes?
Well, I think, I think for-profit companies, big ones, new ones, that bring solutions to the problems we face or see opportunities in problems. For-profits, they need to have a more non-profit mind. You should not be there just to make money, even it's important, but really you should be there just thinking how you're going to be improving the lives of others. The non-profits, they should be having more a business mind, because I'm tired of non-profits. Like, they keep asking for more money, but they never seem to be solving the problems that they're asking the money for. And government should be doing both at the same time. But especially we need to remember all the poor of the world, they seem always forgotten. We forget about them. We are always creating products for the rich of the world. My daughters can go to an Apple store and test the computer before they buy it. But the poor people of the world don't have these same stores, so they can test a clean kitchen. 3 billion people on planet Earth are cooking with fossil fuels. In the process of feeding humanity, we are destroying the environment. And this is not sustainable, but this is an opportunity for companies and business to create the kitchens of the future, that without cutting trees, we could be feeding a forever growing population. So this is what I will do. For-profits, they need to have this mindset that it's very important that they succeed to improve the world. And the non-profits need to start becoming much more thinking like a profits. What is the return on the investment is something we all need to be asking ourselves. And that investment needs to be proof, which is giving a shot to humanity itself. And sometimes this starts with the right kitchen that can give hope to millions of families around the world that in the process of feeding themselves, they're destroying the environment and their future. So big problems have very simple solutions. Sometimes we overcomplicate the response. We need to go directly to what is my return on investment. In my case, is use one plate of food at a time. Sometimes it's the way that we start creating change and creating opportunity.
Thank you, Jose. Florent, where are you? You also asked for, space for a question. There you go.
Hello, this is Florent Kaiser, co-founder and co-lead of Acción Andina. And we are proving that by uniting communities honestly and deeply, we can restore forest across an entire continent, South American Andes. My question has to do with, when we look around this room, and there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of optimism. Yet out there's a whole different world for many of us. There's a lot of fear, there's a lot of fear of crisis, of despair. How can we use the collective power and message of the Earthshot Prize as a platform to foster hope in the communities and young people that most need it today?
Aha, a question right to the heart of what we're doing. I'm afraid that's a question that all three of you are going to have to answer in your own ways. And if you answer it correct, you can stay in the mycelium, and if you still have to learn, who wants to jump in?
I'm happy to go. I mean, I live in the mycelium, so I'm planning to stay there.
Okay.
It's such a good question, because the reason there's so much despair is that we are not doing as good a job as those who are spreading fear in telling our stories of hope. I live on a continent that today presents some of the most exciting investment opportunities for both climate and development. Not many people know that.
And the Earthshot Prize is going to your one.
We cannot wait to celebrate the Earthshot Prize there. But consider this, the youngest and fastest growing workforce in the world is on the African continent. 1 in every 5 people on this planet will be African by 2050. We have the average age or the median age, however you want to call it, in my country, Kenya, is 19 years old. With so many exuberant, young, highly educated young people waiting to transform their countries, their economies. We also have a continent that is beaming with the abundance of some of the best renewable energy potential in the world. 60% of the best solar potential is on the African continent. And yet, only 3% of solar investments make their way there. We're not doing a good job, somehow, of drawing investments and beginning to understand why the money is not flowing where the sun shines. And then we also know the abundance of critical minerals. Somebody mentioned lithium-ion batteries, and almost every important critical mineral needed for the renewable energy sector is in abundance on the African continent. Here's the thing. The world will not address its climate, and I say our climate and development goals, if we do not unleash the potential of Africa's climate solutions. That's a partnership story. Public, private, philanthropic, all of us. That's what we are not doing so well in telling. It's extremely exciting, it's urgent, it's action-oriented. I live in that continent, so I see it every day. But I wonder, what do we need to do to tell it better? And some of those people who can help us do that are right here. But those are the stories we have to tell and transform lives. See, we don't only need to do it because it's the right thing to do. We do it because it's actually in our enlightened self-interest.
Cinda?
I think there are... There are some people who think sometimes perhaps the slow pace at which we're moving on climate action is because politicians aren't moving quickly enough, and perhaps politicians aren't moving quickly enough because we're somehow polarized on this issue of climate change, and some people doubt it or don't agree with the action that needs to be taken. That view is wrong. People do want action. The United Nations Development Programme ran a survey this year that found of those high-emitting countries, the majority of people in those countries wanted their governments to do more and faster. In fact, the nation where often it's held up as somehow being divided on climate is the United States. 66% of people wanted their government to move faster and further. So I do think we need to move on beyond this idea that somehow the general population are holding us back. And politicians do need to take responsibility by the pace at which we work, because actually the world is waiting for it. They've seen the dumpster fire that is climate change, and they are calling for people to put it out. But one of my messages would be for our finalists. You do incredible work. And I think because in some cases we have startups in amongst the mix, there's perhaps not a hesitancy, but almost the approach of, we need to reach out to investors or to government for policy change with some kind of deference. Not apologetic, but perhaps without being quite as forthright as you otherwise might be. But you are the ones giving us the gift. You are the ones that have something to offer. You are the ones that are bringing us hope and optimism. So take that and turn it into the absolute confidence we need each of you to have as you reach out to government and as you reach out to investors. You have so much to offer us, so please keep going and maintain your optimism and your expectation that we should all do more.
I used to live in an apartment that I had an elevator that I think used to speak to me every day, because we'll have phrases right there. And one they claimed was from Winston Churchill. It said, success, and we all here, we look for success, for you and for others, but said success is going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. Be ready to fail and celebrate. But also somebody, very important, somebody said that the best of life and the best opportunities actually are at the end of your comfort zone. Beyond that horizon we don't see. Don't be afraid to be on that horizon, because there is where the true opportunities are going to happen. I used to have one guy, Bretschger, 30 years ago, a person very important in my life, a food fighter. He said, in terms of social change and philanthropy, that it seems that philanthropy was always about the redemption of the giver, when philanthropy must be about the liberation of the receiver. Let's start doing things to give dignity to the voiceless. Let's start making sure that we don't feel pity for the people, but we give them our respect, showing up there, creating opportunity, creating your ideas into real agents of change. I am President Andres, and I endorse this message.
So to those three wonderful answers, I would like to add what is underneath those three. And Florent, I think it is not surprising that we humans react with fear, with overwhelm to the greatest threat that we have ever faced. In fact, we humans, that's the way we're wired, and that's why we're still alive, because when the lion comes at us, we do one of three things. We fight it, we freeze and hide under our blankets, or we go into flight. Fight, flight, freeze. We have been doing that, my friends, for thousands of years. In fact, we've been doing it as long as we have been human. So that is what we are wired to do. So I am not surprised that when we recognize the biggest threat we have ever had to the existence of humanity on this planet, that there are so many people that go into fight and begin to blame and attack others. That there's so many people that go into freeze because they feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem. That there's so many people who go into flight because they just go, actually, I don't want to see that piece of news. Can I have a piece of chocolate cake? Right? Because distract themselves. So I understand that. That is a human reaction. The question I think we all have in front of us is, it has been a human reaction that has served us well. Does it continue to serve us well? Or are we at the point in which we have to recognize the threat, recognize what our instinctual reactions ought to be, and then make an intentional choice about changing our reaction and stepping into cultivating and growing our sense of agency about being able to make a difference. That is not something, honestly, that society has taught us. But that is what is needed now. And that is why the Earthshot Prize is so important. Because, as we have heard, the Earthshot Prize scours the world, finds, points to, bring them to scale and support not just those of you who are actually having an impact that can be measured in tons or acres or trees planted. That is really important. But the other piece that I think is equally or even more important, which is underneath that, you are showing to the world that there is a different way of thinking. There's a different way of speaking, and there definitely is a different way of acting. And by showing that there is another way, you're helping to not just inspire, but honestly pull people in the direction of the solutions and of the better world that we want to see. So it is not just, yes, it is also about measurement and integrity, as Mark Carney said, but it is also a question of, can we get to what humanity can really do if we pull ourselves up by the bootstraps at this most critical moment in the decisive decade. Thank you, everyone. We have to close here.
Please welcome Cameroonian-American professional basketball player Joel Embiid and Vice Chairman and President of the Toronto Raptors, co-founder of Giants of Africa, and founder of the Zara Group, Masai Ujiri, for a conversation with South African broadcaster and businesswoman Bonang Matheba.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for that warm welcome. As mentioned, my name is Bonang Matheba from sunny South Africa, and it gives me such great pleasure to sit here in front of all of you to chat about a continent that I call home, Africa, a continent that is rich in natural resources, and of course a continent that is rich in a young population, eager for transformation, and of course eager for change. This morning, I'm sitting with two African giants, really, and we're about to discuss some of the opportunities and challenges that Africa faces in terms of scaling up transformation and how the continent's vibrant people and our culture of creativity have really positioned us for true success. So thank you very much to all of you for being here. Masai, I'm going to start with you. Let's chat about Africa. I mean, Africa is an incredibly dynamic continent, really, and an investable place, I can say. But let's talk about your journey a little bit, from scouting talent in Africa to leading social and economic development on the continent, through basketball. Where specifically, let me rather say, should people be investing on the continent?
First of all, thank you. Thank you for being here and inviting me to speak here. My view is youth, and I think strongly about, even before I go to places or regions on the continent, I would say we have to invest in the youth. They say 1 out of every 4 persons in the world will be African by 2050. The median age in Africa is 20 years old. Yes, and where that population is going, the demographic is incredible. When I see urbanization and cities really booming and growing on the continent, honestly, you pick wherever you want. There's different cultures, different people, and I think infrastructure is something that we need to really look at and invest in. The last thing I would say is women. Yes, we need to invest more in women all over the world, but even particularly for me, yes, on the continent. So youth, women, I think stand out to me. Infrastructure stands out. The different regions in Africa, there's so much richness in everything in different places you go to, whether it's Nigeria, whether it's the Southern Africa, whether it's Eastern Africa, there's so much. You go to Francophone Africa, there's so much richness in anything. And then Africa's talent is its people. Yeah, the people are so talented in different fields. So I'll leave it at that.
We'll chat about the youth a little bit later, but Joel, I want to know, you moved to the US from Cameroon as a teenager, and how has that, being part of the African diaspora, how has it impacted you, rather, personally and professionally?
I mean, it's helped me a lot because, being from, thank you for having me here. It's an honor being here, sitting with you guys, talking about, this type of things. But, looking at my story, being from Cameroon, if we're talking about sports, I played sports growing up, but I was playing volleyball, and, Masai was talking about infrastructures, and we don't have a lot of opportunities, and it wasn't until I was 16 years old that I started playing basketball, and it just happened out of nowhere. And I was lucky enough because someone saw something in me, and he was one of the guys that gave me the opportunity, and really, one of the reasons why I'm sitting right here with you guys. But it's helped me a lot because, the way I think about, what I want to do about my life. It all comes from, being from Africa. I was raised, what I saw growing up, the struggle, what we had to deal with, to, have these opportunities. And like you said, there's a lot of talent, but there's not enough opportunities. But, I think just the background, the way of life, it just shapes you to, just want to keep working harder and harder to be successful.
Let's talk about storytelling. I mean, you've both been part of documentaries and projects that have, kind of showcased the African culture to the global audience. Masai, I want to know from you, what role does storytelling play, particularly in expanding the continent's influence abroad? Whether it's through movies or television or even social media?
Well, I think they are not told enough. I really, the stories of Africa were done with, people coming and taking pictures with kids and flies, everybody thinks Africa is about just safaris. Yes, it's beautiful, and they're beautiful places to go to. But I think charity and philanthropy is incredible, but we want investments in Africa. I think there's plenty of room for that. I think we're heading, slowly in some of the right direction with leadership in certain areas, and we have to continue to grow in that. But I'll say, look at this guy, sitting here, is an MVP in the NBA. If I had my phone, I would show you a picture of him in Basketball Without Borders many years ago. Skinny, low, scrungy kid. But look at what he has become. Does everybody know that journey? Does everybody know, that story? He scored 70 points in a game, one of the most dominant players in the NBA, just won a gold medal. And and there's so many of them in the league, the Pascal Siakams, there's so many young African players, but young African players in every league, in every sport, right at the top. You see them in soccer, but it's also entertainment. You see what all the artists are doing. You see Tyler, Davido, Burna Boy, all these people are blowing up in the world. And we need platforms, we need infrastructure for all of this to grow. And storytelling is part of it. We have to make this, part of our ecosystem. So that these more kids, more youth, Joel has a kid, he has a kid on the way. Sorry, I just told you business. I have 3 kids. For me, I think, we have to pave the way for that. And I know that's how he's thinking. I know that's how Pascal Siakam thinks. I know how these young African players, and even ex-players, really think. We have to develop this platform. And Bloomberg has done an incredible job following, they really have, following some of us, following the stories, coming and covering, and we appreciate that. But we have to absorb this and go even do more.
John, let me, hand that question to you again. The importance of storytelling, in expanding the continent's influence abroad.
Like you said, it's all about the youth, and then for myself, I feel like, I just said it. There's a lot of talent, but most of the time, and a lot of times, we are not seen. If I wasn't lucky enough, I would not be sitting here. But, you gotta, when you're looking at my story, I just want people to understand that it's possible. That's why storytelling is, is extremely important, because I believe, growing up watching a bunch of athletes, in every sports, because I watch every sports, and just looking at the success and what they did. And that's how I dreamt, because I wanted to be at this level. I wanted to be as successful as those guys and put the work in. And I want people to understand, just look at my story. I wasn't supposed to be here, honestly. But, I also put the work in because of what was given to me. and took advantage of it. And there's a lot of people that are waiting for that opportunity. And like I said, looking at my story, I just want people to dream and believe that it is possible.
Absolutely. Now, Masai, you mentioned early on, you mentioned the youth, in Africa, and 20 years into Giants of Africa, your ethos is dream big. Mm-hmm. What inspires you most about the next generation of Africans?
Well, they are smarter than us. Yeah, they are, for one, yes. And sometimes we come off next generation. Well, we have to accommodate, and we have to really absorb this next generation and give them this platform, to really perform. Storytelling is such a big, part of it. I look at what South Sudan did in the Olympics, and what Lual Deng, a story, like that. I look at the NBA and what they are doing in Africa. I look at all the young African players playing. There's so many things, and the talent, and we don't have infrastructure. How can we say that in Nairobi, in Accra, in Johannesburg, in Abidjan, there's no arena. There's no arena. But if I count all the artists that are going crazy in this world, they cannot actually do a tour in their own continent, but they can come and sell out Madison Square Garden and then hop to Scotiabank Arena and then go to United Center. They can go to all these places and sell them out, but in our continent, we don't have, that opportunity. That's that next generation that we have to prepare for, and we need people to be visionaries, investors to think, what this ecosystem can actually look like when this happens. We do have the facilities. We do have 30, 40 years buildings that have been built how many years ago, in the colonial days, and nothing has been done in prime locations in all these cities. So back to your question, I think that this next generation, we have to prepare them. We have to find a path. Just like maybe there were these little paths that were found for us. They were not so open, and there's plenty work that these guys have done, we've tried to do. We have to find, those little paths and make it a little bit easy, for the youth and especially women, especially young girls of the continent.
I love that. Now, Joel, I want to know, your foundation works towards improving the lives of young people in Cameroon. Like Masai said, what do you think is needed to help them flourish?
I think, we keep going back to infrastructures, not just in sports, education, health. I think, mentors. I think, those are some of the keys. Role models, Masai, has been a role model, especially for me. Being in this situation, for a long time, I've always wanted to do, all I cared about is, helping people. And, since I became a father, that became even more amplified because I look at my kids, I look at the legacy I want to leave, I want them to understand, the world, they have everything. But growing up, we didn't have everything. But I want them to understand that, that's not, in other countries, where we grew up is not that way. So I think, the focus on youth, infrastructures, mentorship, I think is a big deal because it's helped me a lot.
Absolutely. Masai, same question to you. You mentioned the youth, you mentioned women. What is needed, to help our continent flourish and to help the youth flourish and to help young women flourish?
I think we need to look at the continent better. Even inside the continent, leadership needs to be better. I think outside the continent, the diaspora are doing an incredible job. Affecting. You don't have to do big things. People sometimes think you have to go back and do grand things. You can start little. And I want people to actually think of Africa as a place of investment. I know sometimes it's not that straightforward, but they are unbelievable people that you can work with. You know, there are many people, I think, in our circles, in our world, you know, like in different aspects of life that you can actually work with in Africa. They're incredible countries that you can go to. I'm going to re-emphasize it again. Where every other continent is getting older and Africa is getting younger. There's something there. Yes, there's something that will change, and we have to pay attention to that. To say 1 out of every 4 people is going to be African by 2050, let's go back and really think about that. And think about the talent that comes from there. Absolutely. When I say that there's 100 LeBrons and 100 Embiids walking around Africa, and we haven't been discovered. Listen to Embiid's story, and he says how he was close to not being here. Yes, very close to not being here. There are some of them that are 30 years old, 40 years old, and maybe they never saw a basketball, but they are this tall, and they are physically like this big. And yes, but they never saw a basketball because there was no infrastructure, right? Yeah, there was nowhere to play. Why do you think Africans dominate the world in soccer? Because as soon as we come, if I bring a football right now, me and Embiid now will show an exhibition to all of you here because we came out of our mother's wombs and the first thing we did was kick a ball. Yes, in your backyard, you don't need much facilities. That's why the talent is super. Other sports we have to encourage, whether it's basketball, swimming, anything we really have to encourage.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Masajja. Well, thank you very much. Africa's young. Africa is dynamic, passionate, investable, and ready. So that's it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm delighted to introduce you to this year's 15 new Earthshot Prize finalists. These solutions are some of the most exciting, innovative, and impactful we've seen. And the people behind them are true inspirations. I know you're as passionate as I am about making a difference to our planet, and we can't wait to share their stories with you. The 2024 Earthshot Prize finalists are to build a waste-free world, ferment up.
What we are doing is actually keeping food as food, producing ingredients that are better for you and better for the planet.
NFW.
If the products you buy come from nature, they can end well by going back to nature.
Keep it cool.
I'm very happy that I can help the community to be more resilient, be more adaptive, and secure their livelihoods.
To clean our air, Gaio.
As the world sees waste, Gaio sees an opportunity to make a leap, to create jobs, and to ensure just inclusion.
Delight.
We will celebrate all the many advancements that we have in technology, but all that means is the people without access to energy are getting further and further away from where the rest of the world is.
MYCL.
The beauty of this mycelium technology is we can create more and more new innovations to save the planet.
To revive our oceans, myalgae.
There's fish in the ocean that we're mincing up, and then you've got these algal blooms that are causing real issues. Can you solve both at the same time?
High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People.
I'm going to show you how through this solution we're able to mobilize government to boost ambition and protect more nature by 2030.
Coast 4C.
The potential for regenerative seaweed farming to revive our oceans is absolutely phenomenal. And at Coast 4C, what we're trying to do is to really help modernize that production and ensure that it's sustainable.
To protect and restore nature, Altin Dala.
I will show you how we conserving and prehistoric landscape with modern technologies, local knowledge, and global partnership.
Nature Metrics.
We're going to show you how we use eDNA to make biodiversity truly measurable at scale.
Amazon's Sacred Headwaters.
Yo puedo demostrar de mi trabajo que todo es posible alcanzar el éxito con la unidad.
To fix our climate, build up Nepal.
Every enterprise that we support becomes like a sustainable economic engine in that area. They're creating jobs, they build houses year after year, long after we have left.
Aquatic.
I'm going to show you how we're going to remove carbon dioxide from the world's oceans and the atmosphere using the aquatic process.
Advanced thermovoltaic systems.
Something that can turn heat, which is everywhere in every instance, into usable clean electricity is just mind-blowing.
A huge congratulations to our brilliant new class of finalists. Please give them a round of applause. And those of you that are in the room today from the 2024 new cohort, please stand up. I'm going to put the lights up. Anyone in the room? I'm the closing act, so let me just say, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you to Mike Bloomberg and the incredible Bloomberg team for hosting us all here today. They have done incredible. Thank you so much. And let me turn now to you. Mike Bloomberg has been one of the original climate pioneers, and we are so grateful to him for how he continues to champion Earthshot and our finalists. I also want to thank our partners, our trustees, the finalists, everyone that came up in the panels today, not just for what they did today, but for what they do every day for the Earthshot community. And I want to thank our founder, Prince William, without whose dream and passion and determination, none of this would be happening. And as I look out at each of you in this room, I want to thank you, because what I see here is courage and commitment and optimism. I see a group of uniquely talented people, influential, moving unprecedented levels of capital, designing new markets, crafting new policies, shaping the future of supply chains and products and business models, economies and communities. And each one of you, I know, wakes up knowing that you're in a race against time to use your platform and your influence to unlock the future we want. And here's what I know. When you leave here now, you're going to run around the whole of New York, negotiating, agreeing, pitching, pushing, risk-taking, leading, and it is exhausting. And sometimes the no's and the inertia and the resistance you meet, they can sap the soul. In the dark of the night, how many of us have quietly held grief and fear when we ask ourselves that question, is what we are doing enough? So as you prepare to leave us, we'd like to put some wind in your sails, oxygen in your lungs, and optimism in your hearts, because today, 15 new Earthshot finalists are launched to the world. And they join a family of 45 past winners and finalists, and all of whom have gone on to do so much incredible work and deliver meaningful change. And these 60 teams are emblematic of the 4,000 nominations currently lighting up our Earthshot database. Each day, new nominations come in from over 167 countries already and counting, representing solutions from not-for-profits, for-profits, cities, states, countries, academics, youth, indigenous movements. Close your eyes for a minute. Go with me on this. It's the last time you'll close your eyes before Friday. Close your eyes and imagine for 1 minute a map of the world. And imagine it lit up with these beacons of hope, determination, grit, creativity, and change. Now imagine that behind each one of those lights are tens and hundreds and thousands of others also dedicating their time and their talent, their creativity to fixing the world one solution at a time. They're telling a unique story. They're telling us that there is a movement happening. It is fragmented, it is hidden in the shadows and the silos, it is leaderless, it is disorganized, and yet it is a movement of creatives, of change makers, of builders and dreamers and doers, fixing problems one solution at a time. And every day at the Earthshot Prize, we see more people join this movement from everywhere in the world. And it is infectious. It's fed by the stories of success, like those of our Earthshot alumni, that you are helping to speed solutions to scale with. And that's where I want to leave you with optimism. You may not realize this or feel this, but this movement is inspired by you, because there's a reason you were invited. And a lot of people try to get in, but you were invited. You're all here because you are world builders. You are architecting the future world. You're using every lever that you can to unlock capital, to deploy philanthropy, to craft policy, to redefine contracts and business models. You're putting into place the financial incentives to build a system in which Earthshot solutions of today become the new normal of tomorrow. And in doing that, you are sending a powerful signal. You're telling the world that those who crack the code on renewable, just, sustainable, circular products, economies, communities, they will be the leaders of the future. And that signal is being heard. That signal is driving a movement, and it is being nurtured by the ripple effects of every investment, every hard fought for policy, and every collaboration that you make happen here. So we all see the hurdles and the frustrations and the inertia and the roadblocks. World building is slow and painful, and yes, we are running out of time. But as our amazing chair, Christiana Figueres, wisely asks, we can all imagine the exponential bad, but can we also imagine what exponential good looks like? At the Earthshot Prize, we have a privilege akin to what the first astronauts had. We look at the world through a unique lens, through the lens of this movement, and we gaze daily at that map of growing, twinkling lights, spreading, lighting up the world. We imagine the world that you are building by imagining a world in which every Earthshot solution is scaled and replicated, and it is breathtaking to imagine. Transformation is messy, chaotic, disorganized, uneven, fragmented, but it is happening. And we are willing it into being together. And we will be, and we are, exponential together. Thank you so much.